Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Alan, aka The Bird Bay, and in this video I wanted to talk about how to keep your parrot from screaming. Now, I know that there are a lot of parrot owners out there whose top complaint is that my parrot just screams way too much. It screams when I leave the room. Sometimes it's screaming for attention. For whatever reason, it's just screaming and it's overbearing. And sometimes, I live with somebody else. They can't stand it. I have neighbors complaining. Any of these different reasons, I find that people just can't stand their parrot screaming. So the thing is that we have to understand that parrots are in their element when they chirp and they yell. And they make noise. It's what they do. If you don't want to have an animal that makes noise, then you probably shouldn't own a parrot. But aside from that, really, there are a couple things that we can do to reduce the amount of screaming that a parrot does. And when I mean screaming, I don't mean like noise, right? When I mean screaming, I mean like when they're yelling and like you can hear it across the room. If you have a macaw, you'll hear that thing a mile away, just yelling off the top of its lungs. So I want to just start off by going into the fundamentals, right? So when I first got Elfie, he used to scream a lot, and actually he did it for the first year, maybe year and a half that I had him. And I realized that in the beginning he was yelling because he was in a new environment, and when I would leave the room for too long, he would start yelling, and I thought about it and I was like, why is he always yelling? And then I realized that it's what parrots do. Parrots yell because they're trying to communicate with their other flock members, and if I'm part of his flock and I leave and he's worried about where I'm at, he's gonna call me, and that's just what parrots do. So some things that you can do. Number one would be to make sure, and it's gonna be the basics, I know it's gonna sound boring, but make sure that you have your parrot on the proper diet. I recommend a pelleted diet with a good balance of nutrients in it that the parrot's going to need. And sometimes when you have like a good, pellet brand that you buy, it's going to have all the different fats, carbohydrates, proteins that a parrot's going to need in its daily diet. And sometimes you don't really actually need to feed them anything other than the pelleted diet. Now, if you want to add, veggies in there, chopped, so they call it, you totally can. It's, up to you. But, the pellets are formulated to cover the basics and the necessities that a parrot's going to need. So making sure that your parrot's on the proper diet is going to be important. Like, I know for a fact if I feed Elfie certain types of foods, he tends to get more hormonal. If he's overeating during like mating season, he's going to be just more aggressive, and he just acts different. So I, for the most part, give him a well-balanced pelleted diet. And I think some brands that I recommend are like Zupreme is one of them, and KT. Those are pretty solid. And anyway, with that being said, you're going to want to make sure that you have them on the right diet. Sometimes, bird behavior, birds acting up, birds being aggressive, birds yelling can just sometimes do with the different, variety of their diets puts them in different moods. And it's totally true. Like if you look at humans, we can be in different moods if we're, eating different types of foods. When you eat more carbohydrates and fats, you tend to be more sluggish, you tend to be not as active, tend to gain a little bit more weight. It's going to be a similar effect for parrots. So first things first, I would say, make sure that you have them on a good, proper diet. The next most important thing is going to be making sure that your parrot is getting at least 12 hours of sleep a day. And when I say 12 hours, I say that because, 12 to 14, because parrots have a faster metabolism than people do. Their body runs at higher energies and higher, metabolic rates to be able to, sustain them flying and moving back and forth all the time. Their heartbeats are also like way higher than humans. Anyway, won't get into logistics. Make sure they have enough sleep, 12 to 14 hours, uninterrupted sleep, black out their cage, cover them up so that, they have uninterrupted sleep. And if you can, put them in another room would be the best case scenario. And then, the most important thing that I will say to, just train your parrot to, to scream less, to screech less, is going to be to just make sure that your parrot is, how do I say it, not motivated to yell. Sometimes parrots will yell because they want a reaction out of you. It's going to either be for attention, it's going to be for sometimes food, it's going to be for what else can I think of? Calling you when you're in a different room. What you can do is, and what I did with Elfie is ignore the yelling. And at first it's going to be a battle of who can cave the first. A lot of people, their bird yells, they go, shut up, they whistle back at it, they try to, just give it attention, so to speak, when it's yelling. And what ends up happening is the bird quickly learns, if I yell, I either get a reaction for entertainment, the human comes over, so it reinforces that negative behavior. So what I did with Elfie is when he would yell, I would just completely ignore him. When he would calm down and he wasn't yelling for at least, I would say, 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, 10 minutes would probably be on the safer side, I would then go up to his cage and give him attention. And he quickly realized that yelling doesn't get me anything. So instead, whenever he does this light chirp, he goes like, eep, eep, and it means kind of like he wants something, he wants attention, I'll come over. And I basically used that sound as a replacement for yelling. So when he makes that sound, I'll come over. If he yells, he knows I'm not coming over. It doesn't matter how loud you yell or how long you do it for, it's not gonna happen. What you looking at, buddy? I think Elfie wants his ball. He's hungry. Let me see if I can get it. Somebody wants to play fetch. Oh, look at you. Come here. He wants to play fetch. It's getting time for him to eat his afternoon dinner. Anyway, don't make noise when your parrot's yelling. Don't acknowledge your parrot when it's yelling. I know that there's some people that have trained their parrot to make a specific sound if they want attention. If your parrot can talk, you can teach them to make a sound instead of come here, buddy. There you go. You gonna give me the ball? Good bird. On a little treat, huh? So yeah, you can basically train your parrot to make a different sound that basically will mean like, hey, I want attention. There's some people that will cover their cage when their parrot yells, do these different things, but I've just found that personal acknowledgement of even just coming to the cage to cover it because it's yelling will result in sometimes reinforcing that behavior. So my number one recommendation is to just ignore your parrot when it's yelling and give it a behavior such that, or acknowledge it such that when it makes noise or when it doesn't make noise, after a little while you come over and you hang out with it. That's going to be one of my top recommendations. And really that's kind of what I did to make sure that Elfie stopped his yelling, make sure he was getting enough sleep, make sure that he had the proper diet, make sure that I wasn't acknowledging him when he was yelling. And another thing that I was going to say is make sure that you're giving your bird enough attention, enough quality time outside of the cage. Because if your bird wants attention, like even Elfie will crack at times. Like if he's been hanging out for most of the day and he's hungry and it's dinner time and he makes his like eep eep sound, his little chirp, eventually he's going to crack and he can't sustain himself anymore and he's going to start yelling. So I just try not to let it get to that point, and eventually the bird quickly realizes, hey, this behavior doesn't do anything for me, I'm just going to stop doing it. So make sure that you're giving your parrot enough quality time outside of the cage. And by quality time, I mean, not just letting your bird out of the cage and having him on a stand all day and ignoring it. I really just mean like making sure that you are doing trick training, just like how I did right now, where Elfie's ready for dinner, he's receptive, he's motivated, he goes to fetch, I give him that one-on-one attention, I make sure I give him his lubbies, so to speak. I just scratch his head toward the end of the day, in the morning as well, and just make sure that I'm giving him enough attention throughout the day, and usually that will cover it. If your parrot also has enough toys inside of its cage, outside of its cage, it's purged to entertain itself, that's going to make a huge difference for just screaming in general. So that's it for this kind of quick video. Let me know what your thoughts are. What have you done to try to make your parrot stop yelling? And also want to hear from you what you want me to cover in some of my next videos here. What you want me to cover, what topics you want me to go over, and make sure that you check out Alfie's Instagram and I in the comments section below, the description below. And there's also going to be a link to a Facebook group below where you can join that group for free and just connect with like-minded individuals, whether you own a parrot or you're going to own a parrot in the future and you're just trying to develop the best possible relationship with your parrot. It's super rewarding. Like once I started trick training him, once I started flight training him, recall training a little bit, once I mellowed out the noise and found a way to make things work, it's totally a game changer, and it just makes your relationship with your parrot that much better. I will say that there is also dependence on species. So a Senegal parrot, the Poicephalus parrot in general, they tend to be on the more quiet. He's trying to yell now to get his ball. They tend to be on the more quiet side, and they naturally aren't as loud to begin with. You're going to have cockatoos, macaws, conures, some of them. They're extremely loud and they can get chattery, so to speak. It's going to also depend. Now, if you have an umbrella cockatoo, if you have a cockatoo, and you try to reduce it from screaming, chances are you can, but it's still going to be fairly loud throughout the day. So that's why I always say make sure you do your homework when you choose the right species of parrot that you want to bring home, or if you already own one, just learn to work with it. It's definitely something that's possible. And hopefully everything that you learn in this video you can apply to what you're doing, and so that you can just have a well-behaved parrot and just develop a good relationship with your parrot as well. So that is basically it for this video here. This is Alfie and I signing out for the day. I will see you guys next time.